What is up, guys? This is Julia, and today we're going to be talking about goals and goal setting because this is a hot topic as we go into 2020. Everybody is running their mouths about, oh my God, new year goals, new decade goals. Here's what I'm going to accomplish next year. Here's everything I accomplished this year and in this decade and next decade. And if you're like me, that's super stressful to you. So if that's stressing you out, then this video is for you. We're going to be talking about life goals and sport goals today and how to do kind of a year in review, a decade in review, and how to set new goals for this year and this decade. The first thing that's really important is when we're talking about goals, when we're talking about year in review, is to be as non-judgmental as possible to yourself. Okay, just accept that things have happened the way that they have, whether you've achieved a goal, whether you've not achieved a goal. To be quite honest, if you get upset with yourself about not achieving a goal, or overexcited with yourself about achieving a goal, or it just wasn't as good as you thought it was, or it was harder than you thought it was, you're honestly just wasting energy because what's happened has happened and you can't change it. So we're only moving forward now. So take that effort, that judgment, and move it into the future, into achieving your next goal. So the first thing that we're going to do is do a year in review. So we want to take a look at our old goals, any goals that you had from last year, from the last 6 months, whether that's in sport, whether that's in life, whether that's for your last season, your last 2 seasons. And I want you to look at those goals and see whether or not you've achieved them. And then I want you to ask yourself, if you haven't achieved those goals, what were the barriers that stood in your way? What were some of the things that stopped you from achieving those goals? What did you let something get in your way? Was it yourself that got in your way? Was it circumstances? Was it time? Was it energy? Was it money? What was it that stood in your way? Those things are really important to identify, and just write those things down. All right, so as we've done a year in review, congratulations if you've achieved the goals. Congratulations for the goals that you have achieved. And we're going to be now learning from the goals that we haven't achieved as we move into 2020 or into the season or whatever you're setting your goals for. Okay, so the basic paradigm that we use is SMART goals, right? So specific, first of all, yes. The goal has to be specific. You have to know exactly which goal you're setting, not just some random arbitrary, I would like to do something great in 2020, or I want to score many goals in this half of the season, or whatever you're looking for. It needs to be a very specific goal. It also needs to be measurable, okay? You need to, being able to measure something gives you the opportunity to know when you've achieved the goal. If you can't measure it, then you never know how far you are, how close you are, whether or not you've actually achieved it or not, okay? So it needs to be measurable. Now, A is kind of complicated because every language does it differently and every psychologist kind of does it differently, but we are going to call it acceptable. So we are going to call it, it needs to be acceptable and it needs to be aspirational for you. You need to be inspired by it. It needs to be acceptable to you. You need to like it. It needs to somehow inspire you to move forward, because otherwise it's really hard to be motivated if you're not even interested in the goal. Okay? The R, it needs to be realistic. You need to actually be able to attain this goal. So it can't be I'm going to score 8,000 goals this season and then I'm going to make the national team and I'm going to the Olympics in 2020. If that's not on the radar for you, even if it's kind of an unrealistic goal, then we don't need to set that goal, because otherwise you're going to be frustrated. So we need to have a realistic goal. The T is it needs to be time bound. Okay, so we need to have an end date on that, whether that's December 31st, 2020, whether that's the last game day of your season, whether that's in 3 game days, whether that's in a week of training, whether that's in 2025. It doesn't matter, but it needs to be time bound. It needs to have an end date so that you know, again, it's specific and measurable, so you need to be able to know whether or not you've achieved that goal within this time frame. And that end date is always motivating for people as well, because a lot of us like that time pressure of saying, oh, now I only have 6 more months, or I only have 2 more days, or I only have a year, and that extra push can help us stay motivated to get it done. So those are our SMART goals. Okay, so once you've narrowed your goal down, I generally set 3 goals a year, or 3 goals for a season. Help athletes set 3 goals for a season, because more than that can get too much, but less than that, it's good to have some diversity, a variety of things to work towards, a variety of things to focus on, whether you have just 1 main goal and then 2 smaller goals, or you've got 3 goals in 3 different directions in your life that you're working on. 3 allows for some diversity, that you're not just always focused on one thing. Okay, so now that you have those goals, it's important to ask ourselves this. What are those barriers from last year that kept us from achieving those goals, and are they going to impact us this year? So if it's financial, if it's time, if it's energy, if it's environmental, what things can you change going into this year so that you actually achieve those goals this year? Because if you didn't achieve them last year based on those barriers, you're going to probably have trouble. It's more than likely that those barriers carry over. So you're probably going to have trouble achieving them this year if you don't do something about those barriers. So what are you going to do about those barriers? Again, if you followed directions, then you wrote them down. So give yourself some time to think over and consider, how can you change those barriers, or can you change any of those barriers? What can you adjust to make sure that you don't carry that same baggage into 2020 so that you can now, give yourself some more degrees of freedom and start achieving those goals. We don't want you to end up in the same place as last year if you had trouble achieving your goals for any reason whatsoever. The last question that I would ask you is, why are these goals important to you? Like, are they yours for yourself? Or are they somebody else's goals for you? Or are they actually important to you? Do they matter? Are you going to be excited when they're achieved? Do you actually want to achieve them? Are you motivated to achieve them? That's really important to identify, because a lot of times we take other people's expectations, we take other people's goals for us, we take other people's standards, and we take them on somehow. And sometimes we don't even realize that we do it until we're halfway through and we're like, well, I hate doing this. Like, I don't give a shit about that. If it's not your goal, then it's going to be really hard to stay motivated, and it's not really going to mean anything to you when you achieve it, except to maybe make someone else happy, which oftentimes doesn't make you happy and probably won't make them happy either. So it's really important to identify, what are the barriers from last year? How can I free myself up for this year to make sure that I have a better shot at achieving my goals? And do I actually want to achieve this goal? Like, does it matter to me, and why? Because that why is going to help you, help to motivate you through this year or this season or whatever your goal time frame may be in order to achieve it. It's really hard to stay motivated long term. Please keep in mind that motivation is kind of a flux state. It's not a stable trait. Motivation is not always like this. It's not always like this. Motivation is supposed to look like this across the lifespan. It's really hard to stay motivated, and actually impossible to stay motivated for our whole lives. So keep in mind that whether your goal is really motivating to you and really exciting to you and really your goal, and you have no barriers, it's still going to be hard to achieve it, because things happen in life. Things happen in sport. Sport is very fast up and down, right? And it's just simply impossible to stay motivated all the time. But these are some tips to give you the best shot at staying motivated for your year 2020, and I look forward to hearing what your goals are. So if you've already set your goals, tell me what they are in the comments, and I will be happy to give you some feedback if you can't figure out what your goals are. So Happy New Year, everybody. Let's set those goals and let's crush them in 2020.